They called him Chris. He was 7 when her world shifted like a house losing its foundation. Her mother, Favor, had been the warmth in the world. A soft-voiced woman who smelled of hibiscus oil and always sang while cooking. Chris remembered the songs more than the words. He remembered his mother's laughter, the rhythm of her steps as she carried laundry on her head, and the way she'd kiss Chris's forehead like she was placing a blessing there. But then his mother got sick. Her illness began like a whisper. It started with fatigue, something she brushed off easily. "I've just been working too much," she told Obinna, smiling through the exhaustion. She was the kind of woman who never liked to sit still. She woke before dawn to prepare Chris's lunch and sweep the compound. She took in mending jobs to support her husband's construction work, and still managed to see Chris's torn school uniform in perfect lines every weekend because he was always playing in school, and they can't afford to buy new uniform. Not yet. It's still new. But then the whispers grew louder. She began coughing. First dry, then deep, heavy, and wet. At night, Obinna would turn in bed and hear her trying to stifle the sound, as if the noise itself was a betrayal of her strength. Some mornings she could barely rise. Obinna took her to the nearby clinic. The nurse, a tired man who looked like he hadn't rested in a week, listened to her lungs and frowned. "You need a chest scan," he said. "This is more than a cold." They paid for the scan with what little they had saved for Chris's school fees. The results came back grim: tuberculosis with signs of possible complications. She needed immediate medication, regular hospital visits, and stronger nutrition. The nurse handed Obinna a prescription sheet so long it looked like a scroll. He stared at it blankly. "How much will it all cost?" The nurse scratched his head. "At least $600 to start. More if she doesn't respond quickly." Obinna did not have $60, let alone $600. He tried. He truly tried. First, he went to his boss on the construction site, a heavy-set man with oil-stained fingers and a reputation for being reasonable when sober. "I'll work overtime. Sundays too. Please, my wife is sick." The man nodded solemnly. "I wish I could help, Obinna, but this economy isn't as it used to be." He gave him $20 and a bottle of paracetamol. She should rest well. Obinna tried his neighbors next. He went from door to door in their small compound, bowing his head slightly as he knocked. Some were kind. Some were embarrassed to say no. One woman said, "I lost my sister to the same thing. Even with money, she didn't make it." One man said, "Obinna, you're a good man. But good men die broke every day." He borrowed when he could. He sold Favor's old sewing machine. He repaired his phone. He sent word to his older brother in Enugu, who replied with a brief text, "I wish I could help. Times are hard." Meanwhile, Favor was slipping, quietly, steadily. Chris didn't understand the full picture, but he saw the worry in her father's eyes. He saw her mother shrink before him like fabric caught in the rain. Favor still smiled for her son, still sang, though her voice was now cracked and thin. "My star boy," she would whisper to Chris, pressing kisses to his forehead. "You will grow bright, brighter than me and your dad. Don't worry." One night she had a terrible coughing fit. Blood stained her handkerchief. Obinna carried her in his arms to the clinic, sweating, breathless, whispering prayers he hadn't said since he was a boy. The nurse met him at the door. "She needs to be admitted," he said. "But we need at least a deposit." Obinna opened his wallet. It held $70. "I'll bring more," he promised. "Let her rest here tonight. I'll find a way." They gave her a bed in the corner, next to a cracked wall and a flickering fan. Obinna walked home that night in the dark, dazed and hollow, every step heavier than the last. The next morning, Favor was gone. Not discharged. Not transferred. Gone. The clinic said she passed peacefully, that she fell asleep around 4 a.m. and never woke up. The nurse placed a small, folded note in Obinna's hand. It was Favor's handwriting. Faint, almost illegible. "Take care of Chris. He is your heart now. Forgive me for being tired. I tried, Obinna. I did." Obinna stood outside the clinic in the rising sun, his face dry, though his eyes were red. He had no more tears left, just the weight of a child in one hand and a future he did not know how to build in the other. He buried her in the village with borrowed money. Chris asked, "When is Mommy coming back?" Obinna crouched and held him tight. "She's not coming back, Chris. But she's everywhere now. She's in your smile. She's in your laugh. She's watching." He meant it. After Favor's burial, Obinna returned to the city with Chris, cradling his small hand like it was the last thing tethering him to the earth. Their room in the shared compound suddenly felt twice as empty. The mattress seemed colder. The old plastic stool Favor used to sit on while peeling yams was still beside the door, her scarf folded neatly on top. Chris touched it every day. For the first few days, Obinna tried to keep things moving. He cooked rice that came out too watery. He cut Chris's hair too roughly. He walked him to the neighbor's house when he had to leave for work, promising, "I'll be back before sunset." But grief is a slow, sharp poison. It made his limbs heavy, his thoughts scattered. He would hammer nails at the construction site and miss the beat. He forgot tools left early came late. The foreman, a lean, irritable man named Tanko, called him out in front of the others. "Obinna, you're a good man, but this isn't charity. If your head isn't in the work, you're wasting time and cement." Obinna apologized. Once, twice, but on the third strike they told him not to bother. Coming back. No warning. No final pay. Just a quiet nod and a turning of backs. He walked home that day under the weight of an invisible sack. Loss, shame, failure. At the compound, Chris ran up to meet him with a crayon drawing in hand. A picture of him, his mommy, and his daddy holding hands under a sun with a smiley face. He smiled, but his chest burned. The next few weeks were a blur of desperation. He did odd jobs, hauling sand for masons, running errands at the market, cleaning gutters. They paid him in coins, sometimes in leftover bread. He rationed it for Chris. He sold his wristwatch, then his second-best shoes. At night, when Chris had fallen asleep with her head against his thigh, he would sit in the dark and talk to Favor's memory. "You left me in the deep, Favor. You left too soon. I don't know how to do this without you. Who is going to take good care of Chris as you used to now?" He was quiet. Rent was late. Landlord knocked. One neighbor told him, "You can't keep that boy like this. He is growing thin. He needs routine, food, school." Obinna nodded. He knew everything they were not saying. He tried again to ask for help from old friends, relatives. One cousin told him bluntly, "Children are a blessing, but raising one alone, it's God that takes charge of that." Finally, one morning, as the sun filtered through the slats in their window and Chris slept soundly beside him, Obinna packed a small bag. He filled it with 2 dresses, a brush and a pair of sandals that didn't quite fit anymore. He wrapped her in a blanket and carried her out before dawn. They took a bus to the village. Chris was excited at first, thinking it was a holiday or a visit, but Obinna's silence on the bus worried him. He didn't smile. He didn't answer his questions. He just held him tighter. When they reached Mama Obi's house, a lopsided structure with rusted gutters and a sleeping dog at the porch, Obinna hesitated. He had not seen his mother in nearly 3 years. The woman in her mid-40s opened the door with a grunt, tying her wrapper while checking who's at the door. Mama Obi isn't old yet because she gave birth to Obinna at the age of 15, which made her parents disowned her. The father of Obinna abandoned her, so after the birth of Obinna, she never married or dated any other man. Because she lost trust for men, she brought Obinna up herself. Obinna is 29. That means Mama Obinna hasn't been with any man for close to 30 years now. Obinna bowed slightly. "Ma, good morning. You came without notice." "Why?" Obinna's voice cracked. "I need help." He explained everything in the courtyard. His job loss, the funeral debt, the missed meals, the way Chris's eyes were losing their light. He didn't beg, but his voice had the sound of a man unraveling. "I need her to stay here, just until I can find my feet." Mama Obi looked at the boy. She was quiet, hiding behind her father's trousers, his eyes huge and uncertain. "You bring me burden, not blessing," the woman said, frowning. A boy child at that. They play a lot at young age, I won't have that strength to keep shouting every day. Who will feed him? Who will watch him? My back is not young. I'm not as strong as you. I'll send money, Obina promised. Anything I earn. Where is the money now? The woman snapped. There was a long silence. Then finally a shrug. Put his things in the back room. Let him not disturb me. Obina walked Chris into the dim, dusty room behind the kitchen. It had one window, a straw mat, and a rusted lamp. Chris looked up at him. Daddy, are we staying here long? He knelt beside him, brushing his cheek. No, my star boy, just for a while. I need to go make things better. He nodded, but he didn't understand. When he walked away, he stood in the doorway, watching the dust trail from his shoes fade into the morning. He never turned back. He couldn't. If he had, he might never have left him. And that was that. Life in the village was quiet, but not gentle. Mama Obi was not cruel in the way of monsters. She did not beat him for pleasure, or scream without reason. But she was cold, and her love was like a locked door that no one had the key to anymore. She spoke to Chris only when she needed something. Fetch water from the stream. Cut the firewood smaller. Wash the floor. Again. She never called him by name. Only boy or you. He did all she asked. Not perfectly, but with the aching eagerness of a child who wants to be loved. He thought, perhaps, if he was good enough, she would begin to smile at him. She never did. He wore the same 3 dresses over and over until they frayed at the hem. His shoes fell apart and were never replaced. When he asked for school, she waved him off. You think I have money to waste on ABCs? At first, Chris thought he had done something wrong. Maybe it was the way he asked about school and looked at his grandmother. Maybe it was the way he accidentally spilled the bowl of water on his first day. Or maybe she had simply never wanted him. Whatever the reason, Mama Obi made it clear within the first week that Chris was a burden, not family. The woman lived by a strict rhythm. She woke at 5 a.m. sharp, regardless of season. Her easy-wear slippers knocked against the floor with every step. She lit the stove with a match and boiled bitter herbs that filled the house with a sharp, choking smell. From his thin mat in the back room, Chris listened to it all, too afraid to move without permission. On his 3rd day there, he ventured into the kitchen to ask for breakfast. She glanced at him without turning his head fully. You want food already? Did you wake up and sweep the compound? Fetch water? Clean the pit toilet? I didn't know Then you don't know how to eat either. She didn't feed him that morning. So he learned, quickly. From that day, his tasks for a child who should have still been in school included sweeping the compound with a straw broom until his back ached, fetching water from the stream nearly a mile away with a bucket half his size, washing Mama Obi clothes by hand, even when his fingers cracked, cutting firewood, carefully stacking it, and stirring the soup pot without complaint. Mama Obi rarely spoke unless it was to correct him or curse under his breath. Useless child. Your mother spoiled you. You're eating my food for nothing. Sometimes, after doing everything, he would sit quietly in the corner while she ate from a steaming bowl of yam porridge or okra soup. She would finish, then say, "Go wash the plate." When he asked, "Can I have some?" she'd raise his cane, not always to strike him but always to remind him, "You eat when you earn it." He would then eat Gary with water, if there was any left, or scrape burnt rice from the bottom of the old pot. On many nights, he went to bed with his stomach rumbling, curling up in his blanket to whisper his mother's name. Chris tried not to cry. He told himself that crying would make it worse. So he hardened, bit his lip, and started talking to things that didn't speak back. Trees, the moonlight, his empty plate. The mango tree behind the house became his best listener. He carved his mother's name into its bark with a stone, whispering, "Please watch me, Mommy. I'm trying." That night, Chris heard a continuous sound coming from Mama Obi's room. That would last for at least 30 minutes. Then stop. It wasn't the first time he was hearing the sound. But he was too scared to go check what is wrong with her that makes her sound as if she is crying every night. Then he stood up to check her room to see if it was really his grandmother making the weird noise. When he got closer to her room, it was louder, so he peeped through her door and saw her lying on her bed and both legs up. She was almost half naked. Her thighs were exposed. That made him quickly return to his room and pretending he saw nothing. The next day, when he came back from the stream with a bruised foot and mud on his legs, he found the door locked. He sat by the doorstep for hours until Mama Obi returned from the women meeting. "Why are you crying?" she asked. "I was outside. I couldn't get in." She scoffed. "You're lucky I didn't let the dogs out." She didn't even ask about his foot. Weeks turned into months. His dresses were now faded and threadbare. His sandals were broken. His hands, once soft and small, had hardened with work. His voice became quieter. His laughter faded entirely. When people from the village passed by and saw him, he would smile out of habit. But no one asked more than once how he was doing. And when he said, "I'm fine," they believed him or pretended to. Some pitied him. A few gave him bananas or groundnuts in secret. But no one ever challenged Mama Obi. She was the assistant women leader, a woman with a cane and a temper. Inside the house, she ruled. And Chris's suffering remained invisible. The worst part wasn't the hunger. It was the loneliness, the way his presence never seemed to matter. Like he was a shadow that moved and worked, but wasn't seen. He would whisper stories to himself at night. Stories his mother once told him. Of queens who ran through forests and lived with lions. Of little girls who grew wings and flew away. Of stars who came down to earth in human form. He would whisper and whisper until sleep took him like a mercy. And yet, Chris did not break. He began to hide extra cassava peels and roast them secretly. He memorized the path of the stars. He learned to steal time under the mango tree to breathe again. He wrote his mother's name in the dust every morning before sweeping it away. Because he believed deep down that someday someone would remember him again. That his father would return. That love would find its way back. Until then, he endured. Not because he was strong, but because he had no other choice. When neighbors visited, rarely, she warned him to stay in the kitchen. No talking. Don't be showing your teeth anyhow. If he laughed too loudly, she would smack the back of his head. "You're not a monkey." Sometimes, he would sit by the old mango tree out back, the one his mother once mentioned visiting as a girl, and cry into his knees. The tree became his only friend. It listened. It did not demand anything. The villagers noticed in their way. The church aunties asked once or twice if he was okay. He always nodded, always smiled, because he had learned that speaking about pain only made it worse. His father called twice a month the first few months. On his birthday, he sent a parcel. New sandals and a box of sweets. He clutched it to his chest and smiled. Until his face hurt. He never told him he wasn't in school, or that he had started limping from carrying too many buckets of water, or that his mattress was just an old sack filled with dry leaves. He was always busy. "I'm doing this for you, Chris. One day you'll thank me." He hoped that day would come. One harm leads to another. One night, Chris tried to take an extra piece of yam from the pot. His stomach had been hurting for days. He was always hungry. Mama Obi caught him. She did not yell. She only stood there for a moment, the fire casting shadows across her oily face. "You thief," she said. Then she raised her cane and struck his arm. Once. Hard. It was the first time she had hit him like that. The next day, his arm swelled. Even at that, he still continued with her morning routines just to make Mama Obi happy. That night, when Chris was about sleeping on bed, he started hearing the weird noise coming from Mama Obi's room again. Out of curiosity, he wanted to know what the problem was this time to answer the long-waited question in his mind. He stood up to check. He was standing at her room entrance. This time, her room door was open because she thought Chris had slept already. What Chris saw his grandma doing changes the story, or rather changed everything. He saw Mama Obi completely naked and her legs were up. She used penetrating a bottle in her private part. Stroking herself in and out, that is making her moan loudly every night. He was shocked, out of surprise, the fact that he wasn't expecting what he saw. He made a shocking sound out of his surprise, and he was frozen and couldn't move because he has never seen a woman's private part that open. Mama Obi heard something in her front. She decided to purse and check. Lo and behold, She saw Chris watching her masturbate with a bottle. She was shocked. Immediately Chris was caught. He ran to his room and held his pillow tight, because he knew Mama Obi will definitely hit him for intruding. So he was prepared for the worst. 2 minutes later, Mama Obi came to his room, trying to start a conversation. "What did you see, Chris? What did you see me doing?" Chris answered, "Nothing, ma'am, I didn't see nothing. I only saw you sleeping." She knew he was scared of saying what he saw, so she moved closer to him, put her hand around his shoulders. "You know, what you saw is the way it is. I can't help myself. No man in my life for 30 years. That is my only way of helping myself. You weren't supposed to see it, but you have seen it already, so it's too late." Chris went on his knees begging, "I won't tell anybody. Please don't hurt me." Mama Obi said, "I won't hurt you. No one is hurting each other here, but rather you would help me with it, so I can be sure you won't have to run your mouth and start talking." "How will I help you?" he asked. "Don't worry. I will teach you. All you have to do is follow instructions." He said okay. She asked Chris to follow her to her bedroom, which he did. When they were both in, she took off her wrapper. Immediately, Chris covered his eyes and turned to the other direction. She said, "No need for that, because that is what you would be eating every single day, as long as you're under my roof." He said, "But I'm just 11 years old." 11 years old is supposed to be sleeping at 2 a.m., not watching his grandmother. While her legs were wide open, she asked him to move closer, "Lie down close to my private part." It took Chris time to do so, but he did. "You know how to suck? Start sucking it," she said. "Such what? And how will I suck it?" "Wait, let me teach you." She pulled him closer, took of his little short, already met his manhood standing. She smiled and said, "Good boy." Then she started sucking Chris' manhood. He was 11, but what he had down there was looking 18. She kept on sucking like a lollipop, like she's missed it all her life. After 10 minutes, she asked, "Now you know how to suck?" She lay back down and asked him to do it. "Just suck out all the juice you see around, especially the upper section." He went low as he moved closer. He didn't like the smell down there. Mama Obi noticed. Still, she said, "Go in, boy," and he started sucking his grandmother private part. The way she was shaking and vibrating. Chris paused and asked if all is well. She yelled at him to continue, not to stop, no matter what. Less that 2 minutes of him licking it, Mama Obi squirt in little Chris' face. Chris stopped and asked if that was we. She said no, but something better and close. She was so relaxed afterwards. She pulled Chris closer and kissed his forehead. "Thank you," she said. She knew there was a big difference between you masturbating yourself and someone helping you with it. She felt the difference. She asked, "Have you eaten? Aren't you hungry?" Chris replied, "I'm hungry. I haven't eaten in days." She smiled and said, "If you do this every day, you won't starve under my roof." She stood up and went to get food for Chris. He was happy when he saw her coming with the food. She watched him eat in her room, smiling and asking him if he wanted more. When Chris was done eating, she told him not to tell any soul about. When they both did, he agreed. And that was the beginning of it all. The next day, when Mama Obi was coming from the market, she bought a lot of chocolate, sweet, and biscuits for Chris. She also branched the pharmacy to get some medications for herself to prevent her private part from having mild odor. She was acting sweet and loving just because of the previous night. When she presented it to Chris, he was very happy and thanked her. When she was about going to her room, she turned back and asked, "I hope you would be coming tonight." Chris said yes. Night came. Chris showered and went straight to his grandmother's room. He already found her lying naked on her bed. They did more than they did the previous night. This time, she told Chris to penetrate her after sucking her, which he did. She enjoyed it. Chris in turn loved it too, even though it felt wrong to him. He has no choice. It was the only way for him to eat. It continues for weeks. Weeks turn to months, and eventually to years. Chris's dad had stopped calling and his number isn't reachable anymore, making Mama Obi tell Chris his dad has abandoned him with her here, and it was just two of them. Chris let the words sink in and now take Mama Obi as his mother, father, and his lover. Puberty kicks in. Chris' voice was going deeper. He started having more hairs in his private areas. Mama Obi never noticed this. They kept on going every night. She started noticing Chris now release semen during sex. She wasn't bothered because she don't see her period every month, just 6 to 7 times yearly. She never knew anything can happen. They never protected themselves. They were going all raw. When Chris was 13, her grandmom missed her period for 5 good months and she was adding more weight. He was taking care of her. She thought it was just fever, but the fever was taking long to leave. It started with fatigue. She would wake up exhausted even after long sleep. Then came the dizziness, the swelling in her feet, and eventually, movement. First, she dismissed it. It's old age, she told herself. My body is slowing down. But one morning, while fetching water with Chris from the clay pot, she felt something sharp and unmistakable twist beneath her ribs. She dropped the pot, and in that moment she knew. 2 weeks later, sitting in a health center 2 towns away, to avoid gossip, she heard the impossible words, "Mama, you're 5 months pregnant." She stared at the nurse as though the woman had spoken in riddles. "Pregnant? How?" she whispered. The nurse nodded gently. "Yes, you didn't notice." Mama Obi's head was swimming. Her ears rang. How could this happen? She had not been with anyone in almost a year. Her body had changed with age. She thought her childbearing days were far behind her. She had raised a son. She was done. But now this? She walked home in silence, head down, heart heavy, unsure what to do or who to tell. The only thing she knew for sure was that she couldn't hide this forever. She didn't eat that day. At night, when Chris came over to her room as always, she told him not today. He asked if everything was okay. She said yes. Then he left. The next day, when it's still very early, Chris came to her room. He met her not sleeping. Looking worried, he asked Mama Obi, "What is it? Talk to me." She decided to open up to Chris and told him she is pregnant. Chris was surprised. "Aren't you old for that?" "That I thought too." "What should we do now?" he asked. "I don't know, Chris." "Am I the father?" Chris asked. She didn't answer his question. Chris knew deep down he is the father of the child. Because Mama Obi never invite any man to the house, neither has he seen her with any corners. As for Obinna, for years is a long time to be gone. He struggled, labored, hustled through construction sites and odd jobs. He had always sent what little he could back home, medicine, clothes for Chris, until his phone got stolen where he was charging it where he was working in the construction site. Now he was finally returning, not rich but stable. He had started a trade in used electronics and was ready to take his son back, start a new life, maybe remarry. He arrived one evening in a car loaded with boxes and smiles. Chris ran to him, clung to his side with joy. But as Obinna turned to look at his mother, he froze. She was standing by the door, belly round and swollen beneath her wrapper. Her arms were crossed. Her face was hard to read. "Mama?" he asked, blinking. What happened?" She didn't answer immediately. She turned and went inside. He followed. "Are you sick? Is it a tumor?" "No," she said softly, sitting on the edge of her chair. "Then what is it?"
"I'm pregnant, Obinna."
Silence fell like a hammer in the room. Chris, sensing the tension, ran outside to play. "You left your child with me and disappeared for 4 years. And now you come back and want to judge." The words hit hard. He stepped back, stunned. They didn't speak for days after that. Weeks passed after Obinna returned, but Mama Obi's silence remained firm. The pregnancy was no longer a secret in the village. Her belly grew round, her steps heavier. Every time Obinna walked down the village road, he felt the eyes on his back. Conversations ended when he entered rooms. Gossip became wind carried through banana leaves and rustling cassava. "Obinna, how could your own mother be carrying a child at her age? Who is the father? Maybe she's covering for someone close to the family." The words weighed on him like cement. Every night he asked again, "Mama, please, you can't keep this to yourself. Who is responsible for this?" But her response was always the same. Sometimes gentle, "Obinna, leave this matter alone." Other times cold, "It is my burden to carry." But Obinna couldn't leave it alone. He began to lose sleep. He watched his son Chris more closely. He began to question his own presence, his worth. Was this my fault? Did I stay away too long? Did I fail her? The thoughts drove him deeper into frustration. Reporting to the elders. When her silence stretched into the 8th month of pregnancy, Obinna did something he never imagined he would do. He went to the village council of elders. Under the shade of the large almond tree, in the square where disputes were settled and family matters judged, he made his case. He stood with his cap in hand before Pais, the oldest man in the village, and 3 other elders, men who had known his mother since she was a girl. Papais, Obinna began, I don't mean to bring shame to my family, but this matter is choking me. My mother is almost 48 and heavily pregnant. She refuses to say who is responsible. I am worried, ashamed, and confused. This is no longer a private issue. I need help. The elders looked at each other grimly. Pais spoke after a long silence. You say she won't speak? Obinna shook his head. Then let us summon her. The council summons. 3 days later, Mama Obi was seated on a wooden stool beneath the same almond tree, dressed in a simple wrapper and blouse, head tied in a faded blue scarf. She looked calm, too calm. Her belly was heavy, her eyes unreadable. Obi Ajili, Pais said, calling her by her full name. You are a woman of respect in this village. We have known you since you were a girl. You are not one to cause scandal. But now, you carry a child in old age, and your silence invites shame. This son of yours, Obinna, has returned only to meet confusion and disgrace. We ask you today, who is responsible for this pregnancy? Or you want to repeat what you did earlier, when you were 15, that you got pregnant for a man and your parents asked who was the father and you couldn't provide or say. Now, at older age, you're repeating the same thing? Mama Obi kept her gaze forward. I will not say, she said quietly. Gasps echoed around the circle. Are you protecting someone? Another elder asked. Were you harmed? Were you tricked? Tell us, so we can stand with you. I will not say. But the child, how will it live without a name? What will we tell the people? She looked at the elders, then at her son, whose face was twisted in desperation. I don't care what they say, she answered, voice calm but firm. I will raise this child, alone, like I have raised every other child. There was silence. Obinna clenched his jaw. So that's it, he muttered. You will hide the truth from your own son? From the elders? You will let this cloud hang over us all. Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. Some truths do more harm than good. Community divided. The elders dismissed the meeting, heavy-hearted. No judgment was passed, only silence. In the days that followed, the village was split. Some respected Mama Obi's privacy, saying perhaps she had suffered some secret pain that didn't need public eyes. Others were cruel. Maybe the child is cursed. Maybe she's hiding a shameful relationship. Maybe the son knows more than he says. Obinna stopped going to gatherings. He rarely left the house. He cooked, cleaned, and took Chris to school. But his eyes never left his mother for long. Every move she made, every sigh, every late-night step to the backyard, he noticed. He even began to question his own son, Chris, who grew quieter as the tension grew. The breaking point. One night, after a storm, the lantern flickered low in the sitting room. Obinna sat across from his mother. His voice was hoarse from exhaustion. Mama, he said, please, I beg you, don't do this to us. She looked at him, eyes tired but firm. You will understand one day. I want to understand now. You are not young anymore. What if something happens during childbirth? What if you leave this world with that secret buried? She turned her face away. Then let it be buried with me. He stood. You're not just hurting yourself. You're hurting me. You're hurting Chris. The longer you hide this, the heavier it gets. She didn't speak. He stormed out into the rain, leaving the door open behind him. The truth and choice. The baby came. The night was quiet, eerily so. A heavy harmattan wind blew against the windows, carrying the scent of dry earth. Obinna paced outside under the mango tree, waiting. Inside the house, 2 women from the village, Mama Ifioma and Nurse Chinyere, tended to Mama Obi, whose groans of labor echoed faintly through the mud walls. He gripped his shirt collar, looking up at the sky. The questions still burned in his heart like hot coal. Who was the father? Why had Mama chosen silence? Would this child carry a curse or a blessing? By morning, just as the first rays of sun stretched across the red soil, the wail of a newborn pierced the air. Obinna rushed inside, heart pounding. There she was, small, wrinkled, pink, swaddled in a faded cloth, nestled in Mama Obi's weary arms. "She's a girl," Nurse Chinyere said softly, wiping her hands. Mama Obi turned tired eyes toward her son. "She is called Chisholm," she whispered. "God is with me." Obinna hard. Despite everything, his heart stirred at the sight of the child. Tiny, helpless, innocent. She didn't ask to be born into this silence. But she was here, and he would not let her feel unwanted. Chapter 12, The New Normal. Life in the house changed overnight. Obinna took on more responsibilities, waking early to cook, feeding Chisholm when Mama Obi slept, buying diapers and medicine. Despite his quiet anger, he couldn't help but fall in love with the child. She had his mother's eyes. She smiled at his voice. She calmed when he held her close. But it was Chris who surprised everyone. At just 13, he took to Chisholm like an older brother, or perhaps something more. He carried her gently, rocked her to sleep, sang songs to her. He stared at her with wonder, studied her features closely as though searching for a reflection. At night, when Obinna thought he was asleep, Chris would sneak into the small room and just sit, watching Chisholm breathe. The question. One evening, weeks after the birth, the lantern burned low in the parlor. Mama Obi was resting on the old cushion, Chisholm in her arms. Chris came and sat next to her, unusually quiet. He looked at the baby, then at his grandmother. "Mama," he said softly, "can I ask something?" She looked at him, surprised by his seriousness. "Yes, my son." He hesitated. Is she my daughter?" Her body stiffened. Chris continued, almost in a whisper. "She looks like me, and I don't know why, but I feel like she belongs to me, like I've always known her." Silence filled the room. Even Chisholm stopped her little cooing noises. Mama Obi looked away, her eyes shimmering. She pressed her lips together, then reached out and placed a palm on his knee. "My child," she said softly. "There are some questions the world cannot carry." "Not yet." Chris blinked. "So, yes." She didn't answer. She pulled him close instead, resting his head on her shoulder, rocking both him and Chisholm gently as though trying to calm a sea of things too big for words. Obinna's acceptance. Obinna never heard that conversation. But he noticed things. Chris was more protective, more emotional. He kissed Chisholm's forehead often. He asked if she could sleep in his room. He fought tears when she fell sick with a fever one night and refused to leave her side. Obinna watched silently. He couldn't deny the strange bond between them. And even though the truth terrified him, he stopped pressing Mama Obi for answers. Not because he didn't care anymore, but because the family was slowly stitching itself together. Wounded, confused, but together, a family rewritten. Months passed. Chisholm grew. She began crawling across the clay floor, chasing Chris's toes and giggling loudly. Mama Obi regained her strength, though her eyes were often heavy with unspoken thoughts. Obinna eventually opened a small electronics shop in the town center. Chris helped out after school. Mama Obi stayed home with Chisholm. The house remained quiet, but not broken. No answers had been given, no confessions made. But in the silence, a new kind of life had taken root. A life built not on truth but on love. A complicated love. A guarded one, but still, love. Chris grew strong and smart, helping with his baby sister and standing by his grandmother. Chinasa grew bright-eyed and curious, never knowing the cloud of her birth. And Obinna stayed, not because he got all the answers, but because he chose forgiveness over suspicion and love over silence. Some mysteries remain buried, but love, real love, rises anyway.